When I started working in the early 2000s, investment banks were starting to work with derivatives. And that's something that basically is quite reminiscent from what we're seeing today with crypto, right? At the time, derivatives was only restricted to very professional investors. And it was like the devil in the room, right? No one wanted to talk about it because it was very complex, very risky. And the truth of the matter is that no one really understood that. As soon as it started basically getting more mainstream, then, you get derivatives everywhere. So I'm kind of seeing the same trend here with digital assets.
Hello and welcome to Public Key. I'm your host, Eitan Danon. Solana spot ETF applications, the OCC greenlighting digital asset activity, and the US emphasizing its desire to be the crypto capital of the world. It's hard not to feel the momentum that is happening in the US and worldwide when it comes to crypto transforming traditional banking. In this Live from Links episode, I speak in person with Carlos Salinas, the head of digital assets at Morabanc, to explore the fascinating intersection of fintech, digital assets, and traditional banking in Andorra. Carlos shares how his bank has responded to both client demand and new forms of economic activity, highlighting their novel digital asset custody solutions and the role of regulatory frameworks that Andorra implemented 3 years ahead of its European peers, allowing Morabanc to navigate the burgeoning digital asset landscape effectively. The conversation highlights the crucial balance between risk mitigation and innovation, drawing parallels between the evolution of derivatives and the current wave of crypto, while discussing the bank's strategy and offering stablecoin-based settlement solutions. This is truly a snapshot of current trends, but also a look at future potential for programmable finance and digital assets. Before we jump into the episode, it's great to share with our listeners that the Genius Act, the long-awaited stablecoin framework, is edging closer to becoming law. In our recent blog, we discussed the ability for this legislation to, quote, provide regulatory clarity to this important industry, keep innovation on shore, add robust consumer protection, and reaffirm the dominance of the US dollar, in the words of US Senator Kristen Gillibrand. To understand more about the stablecoin ecosystem's historic growth and chart the framework for consumer protection and national security, head down to the link in our show notes for more information on amazing charts and graphs. Now, on to the episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of Public Key. I'm your host, Eitan Danon. I'm joined today by Carlos Salinas, head of digital assets and fintech at Morabanc. Welcome to the pod, Carlos.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Before we jump in, I want to kind of scene set and, baseline on your interest in technology as it applied to financial services. When you were in school or at investment firms previously in your career, how did your interest in technology broadly and in crypto in particular, how did that all get started?
So basically, I've been working on the financial sector for all my life, basically the last 25 years. I come from an economic education background, so not really techie by training, but just by personal interest. I've always been basically really interested in technology and how basically it helps, improve processes and things. In my finance career, I've always been working on the edge of things with very complex subjects and always looking at it from a risk perspective. So you need to bring technology into it to make it work, right? When I started working in the early 2000s, investment banks were starting to basically work with derivatives. And that's something that basically is quite reminiscent from what we're seeing today with crypto, right? At the time, derivatives was only restricted to very professional type of investors. And it was basically like the devil in the room, right? No one wanted to talk about it because it was very complex, very risky. And the truth of the matter is that no one really understood that. As soon as it started basically getting more mainstream, then, you get derivatives everywhere. So I'm kind of seeing the same trend here with digital assets. I've always believed that the future of finance is programmable. So kind of basically it's all falling into place now.
Awesome. Well, before getting into discussions of innovation or the product line in Morabanc, its location is super interesting, and I don't want to throw shade at our listeners, but I would venture to say not all of our listeners could point to Andorra on a map bordering both France and Spain. Could you share some unique characteristics of the country? Certainly, Andorra known for tax advantages, commercial banking options. Help us get a baseline about that a little bit. What's the environment? What are some of the unique characteristics?
Well, Andorra is a fascinating place, not just for banking and innovation, just as a country. Basically, it was founded in 805 by Carlo Magno when he was conquering
Charlemagne,
in
English, yeah.
He was conquering everything, from the north. He went over the Pyrenees. He had a very hard time there. And the people living there, which basically were farmers and mountain people, they helped them a lot. And basically, as a gift, he founded Andorra and gave the land to the people living there. And basically, it has been like that since then. So it is basically the oldest country in Europe which borders hasn't been touched since then. So it has always remained like neutral and independent. And even though we are not part of the European Union, we have very strong ties and relationship with them, especially on a political, let's say, setup. Although Andorra is a constitutional country. Basically, we hold the old kind of structure in which basically we have two principles. One is the Bishop of La Seu, which is a town nearby in Spain. And the other one is the President of France. In this case, Macron is our co-prince. So basically, a lot of history, a lot of tradition, and basically, and lots of always in innovation. Living in that type of environment, and to be able to basically to develop what Andorra has become over the years. You needed like people like very innovative, very forward thinkers, and very resilient. Because the environment is really tough in there. And now, especially what we have now, Andorra is kind of basically it's a lab country. There's a lot of regulation being passed in terms of digital economy, innovation, and trying to attract entrepreneurs and new business models, and to test out different ideas, like from mobility to environmental finance. That's basically what we're doing. Quite interesting place to be.
That's great. Morabanc, you were the first to introduce a digital asset custody wallet in Andorra. For our listeners, what are some of the use cases for your bank straddling TradFi and crypto, or what are some of the more innovative offerings that you bring to the market?
Well, for us was basically like we saw that as an opportunity. In 2021, the Andorran government passed a law about digital assets, which is pretty similar to what MiCA is today in Europe. We are kind of 3 years ahead from our peers in the rest of Europe. So we've had this opportunity to basically to test out what is the role of a traditional bank within the digital asset space. And the conclusions are basically that, regulation is extremely important. Without a framework or some rules in which basically you can develop safe products for the clients and for the bank, it cannot be done. So we had that check. And then the other thing that we had was basically natural client demand. Andorra, since COVID, has become basically a place in which a lot of new people is coming to live. One of the good things that COVID brought to us was, the mass approach to telework, right? Telework?
Yeah.
There's been like a massive unlocker in which basically people have been coming to Andorra to live. They work from there. They serve clients all over the world. And most of them, because the profile of these people that has come to live to Andorra is pretty digital, pretty native digital. They deal in digital assets. But still, they have the same problems that the everyday person has. Like, okay, fine, I take my salary, I take part of my salary on a stablecoin or Bitcoin or whatever, but at the end of the day, I need to pay my rent in euros, so I need to basically do my groceries and stuff. So what these people were facing was basically regular banking issues that we couldn't solve because we couldn't prove source of funds, we didn't understand their business model. Everything sounded weird around them, right? So pretty much the main thing that we did was, really to understand these new needs and to basically to take on the role of servicing our society. This is a new form of economy. It's a new form of seeing life. And we as banks, we need to offer services at the end of the day. And a combination of both things, native client demand for traditional banking services mixed up with digital assets or new business models, and the regulation. These two things together, that's what basically gave us the green light to start working on digital assets.
Excellent. Before your current role in Morabanc, you were head of risk for 10 years.
Yep.
You've transitioned from a very risk mitigation-centric role to, I think it's fair to say, one that revolves more around innovation and marrying up all of the different demand signals in Andorra in general, and then among its neighbors, and kind of bringing together all of those different payment systems and rails. What has it been like for you going from some of that risk mitigation-centric philosophy or focus to a day job that focuses more on technology and harnessing the latest tech, innovation? How do you kind of marry the two?
Well, it's been like a great match, to be honest. Probably that's also one of the things that I've been able to do this within the bank. Is I've been there for a long time. I was holding a position which was basically risk management. So I had the confidence of the board, I had the confidence of my CEO. So this also played an important role in me getting the mandate, not just my personal interest, which also it was very important because I consider myself an entrepreneur, and I think basically innovation in the financial sector is extremely difficult to do from the outside. And I think if you have the right ingredients, the way to do this from the inside out. In terms of my risk background, is definitely helping me a lot to be very picky around basically what we do, with whom we do business. We are applying all this due diligence that basically for us is kind of second nature, but when you are actually engage in new crypto firms, you realize that basically, they know a lot about crypto, but they know very little about basically how the financial sector works.
Usually people know a lot about one or the other, but not both, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why I believe that the financial sector, once basically they get the head around that, and with all the news that we've seen about all the regulation going, for instance, here in the US, and all the unlockers that I believe we're going to see in the months to come, they're going to realize that basically the tough part is already done by the banks. Okay, we have compliance teams, we have legal teams, we have processes, we have this mindset of risk mitigation around the bank. It's basically it is embedded into the culture. You have the first line of defense, second line of defense, third line of defense. This is very expensive to build, and it takes a long time. Also important, we already have really good relationships with our regulators, which, they're going to also be in charge of regulating digital asset activity. So this is something that it doesn't happen in a week. It takes years and years and years to build.
Cultural shift.
Exactly.
And I would say, like at Chainalysis, certainly we're focused on the broadening of crypto crime and the professionalization of crypto crime and diversification across lots of different crime types. So we're seeing growth in areas way beyond just the cyber domain in every category across the globe. So are you, as a risk professional now and one focused on tech, what are some of the bigger financial crime concerns that you're trying to mitigate on a daily basis? When we talk about mitigation, what is it that kind of, I won't say that keeps you up at night, but what is on the front burner on Carlos's agenda?
Well, for us, it's extremely important basically to understand our clients and to understand the origin of funds and how those funds have moved around the blockchain before they come to us. So we need to have that crystal clear. We cannot have any doubt, absolutely
Before
any
custody,
doubt,
right. Before custody.
Right. Or off-ramping. We offer both services. We offer the off-ramp service, in which basically clients that have money on exchanges or on wallets or whatever, and they need to have euros and they want to bring fiat over, we do all the analysis, and basically we help them as much as we can to bring that money over. New business for the bank, and then on the custody side the same. We also accept existing Bitcoin or Ethereum. We trace everything up to the point in which the wallet-to-wallet transaction has to be made. We monitor everything, and we make sure that all gets perfectly documented. And actually, we do that, on a case-by-case basis, because the service that we're offering is not retail. It's just basically we are servicing high net worth individuals. So for us, basically, few clients, but they have, sizable portfolios of digital assets. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is starting to open up the asset class to existing wealth clients that we have, that basically they've never touched the asset because, they weren't feeling confident about sending money somewhere else or whatever. And we're basically removing the technological complexity from the equation and treating the asset as any other thing. So they can, if they want to allocate 1, 2, 3, up to 5%, which I think what everybody should have, of their wealth in Bitcoin or Ethereum or a combination of both, that's basically, we facilitate that.
That's awesome. I think when we talk about demystifying cryptocurrency and making it more accessible, an entity like Morabanc is doing a lot, I think, to bring it to the masses and increase adoption. You've posted on LinkedIn, I think recently, just about where you think things are going when it comes to crypto and the financial industry, different plays being made by Coinbase, Tether, GameStop. What are some of the most interesting stories you think going on right now that you would encourage our listeners to pay attention to?
Well, actually, lately we've seen a lot of things. Actually, today we have the Liberation Day announcement, right?
in quotes, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So
right.
We are all eager to see what the president is going to say about that. It's a lot of basically FOMO around this type of announcements, and we'll see. Probably, this podcast will be out before.
Fear of missing out, and also the joy of missing out. Sometimes FOMO and JOMO.
Exactly. It's a bit crazy, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday also, the letter of BlackRock.
Right.
It was, it's a very, very interesting read as well, around basically, it's just basically now they don't hit anything at all. It's just basically they say that's, everything is going to be tokenized and that change is coming very, very quickly and very soon to all of us. So all these things are really important. And regarding the news, basically the pace at which this sector is going is quite
dizzying.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It's just so fast, There are so many things happening at the same time that you kind of lost track. But to be honest, for me, when we started getting ready for this podcast, there were other things. But then for me, now the Larry Flynn letter, basically, it's a 24 pages document. There's a lot of material there. I recommend everyone to read that, to go through it with a critical mind, of course. But I think, it's setting up the roadmap for what the financial sector would look like in a few years' time.
Excellent. Does some of that momentum in the US now, does that open up opportunities, do you think, for Morabanc to offer a wider range of services or kind of to expand the clientele, or is it more focused on the EU local market, EU market? How do you view that?
Well, at the end of the day, the US market, the US investor is a huge force in the market, not just
globally,
not just on digital assets. Basically, any decisions made on US soil, they reverberate across to all of us, right? So we are seeing like huge movements since President Trump came to the White House and started basically signing all these executive orders. Basically, the European politicians are like basically chickens without head, just running all over the place, and it's kind of quite funny to see things that we had all in the thinking about why we don't do this, why won't we do that, now they want to basically to catch up to 25 years of inactivity in 2 years' time. Now with the savings union in Europe, rearm Europe, all these things, So basically, anything that happens in the US has an impact in the rest of the world. And when you add the digital layer to all this, it's just going to get quicker.
Right.
The changes are going to be much faster. And, I don't know how we as a society, we're going to really cope with this, because when you start basically adding AI, digital rails, changes that happen so quickly with that much weight in terms of influencing politics and influencing the life of millions and millions of people. It's going to be very, very interesting, to be honest. I think it's a great place. It's a great time. It's a great time to be alive. It's so crazy.
Yeah, no shortage of interesting things happening.
Exactly.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but Morabanc is developing a stablecoin-based settlement solution to streamline custody. Can you walk our listeners through in a little more detail how that works? I think use cases for stablecoins are growing by the minute, certainly not only in the US, but globally, increasing clarity and increasingly frequent discussions around stables. What is the settlement solution? How does it work? How will it be beneficial for Morabanc's customers?
Basically, what we have is the custody solution and the digital asset solution, because it is catered for a select group of clients. We can pretty much play as we were a startup. So what we realized when we started working with it and we started getting a bit more volumes on it, is that basically mixing the traditional rails and the digital rails, it was basically dampening the whole process. Okay, in which basically if a client wants to buy Bitcoin, but then takes 2 days for them to take delivery, because I need to send the dollars, through the physical rails. The experience as a whole doesn't really, it's not good enough, in my opinion. So basically what we did is really separate both worlds. They work in parallel, different speeds, but I just wanted to make sure that at least the digital asset leg was complete, not just basically being able to go out to the liquidity providers and get Bitcoin or Ethereum, but also at the same time sending them stablecoin for that to settle instantly.
Sorry to interrupt a powerful conversation, but it's hard not to intervene when an entrepreneurial mind like Carlos is discussing stablecoin solutions. Let's take it back to the Link's main stage, where our CEO, Jonathan Levin, is talking to the CEO of Tether, Paolo Arduino. Paolo shares his optimism for the US regulation on stablecoins and the potential for Tether to have a domestic stablecoin in the US, while also highlighting the importance of stablecoins to support emerging markets. Let's listen in.
A US stablecoin and a non-US stablecoin are very two different things. So a US stablecoin is something that will have to compete with PayPal, Cash App, Zelle, and 15 other different ways to pay with credit cards and debit cards. So a US domestic stablecoin is a product that is very institutional, is very B2B. Sure, can be used also by retails, fine. But the US has already the best system for US dollar, the best way to transfer US dollars. The legislation in the US has to be one thing, and outside the US should take into account that it has also to work for the emerging markets, developing countries. So Tether is very much looking forward to continue the good work that has been done so far until today and will continue to do in the future to help the spread of the US dollar, and so reinforce and being the last stronghold for the US dollar generally. And also, I must say that we are quite excited because we are following the legislation, and we think that there is an opportunity for Tether to create a domestic stablecoin in the US.
That was a great clip. And it's always good to get a dose of optimism when it comes to stablecoins and regulation. Let's go back to the episode now and hear how Carlos and Morabanc are approaching their stablecoin solutions.
Right, so I execute the trade, I send the stablecoin, I get delivery of the Bitcoin in question of like minutes, and I remove all the, let's say, counterparty risk from the equation. Then the fiat part of the transaction, it just goes at its own pace, right? But at least, I can show the clients that their wallets are completely settled, and basically all the assets that they purchased are perfectly booked and accounted for on the ledger. Pretty simple idea, but it removes a lot of basically friction. And what I've noticed by doing this at my scale, which I repeat is very small scale, the inevitability of it all. Okay, when you are basically doing this and you notice that basically the same 50K takes a few minutes to settle in one side, and on the other side it takes 2 or 3 days for that to go back and forth. There are basically days of uncertainty that you don't know where the money is, or it can be stopped somewhere along the
transit. Right?
Exactly, in transit. That there's a lot of uncertainty around that. There's a lot of people involved in that. There's a lot of companies, different players involved in that. Whereas the other side, it just takes a few minutes of instant atomic settlement and liquidity. It's just going to go in that direction. It cannot go anywhere else. The savings are so huge. The savings that can be realized by applying blockchain technology to traditional financial sector processes is so big.
There's a lot of alpha to be made, I think.
Exactly,
right.
Operational alpha.
Right, exactly.
So it's so big
right.
that it cannot be ignored anymore. And I think that's the way it's going to go. It's true that the financial sector, traditional financial sector, has a lot of motion and traction, and it's like this big elephant that moves very, very slowly. But what we like a lot in the traditional financial sector is like free peanuts, right? And there's a full bag of free peanuts out there when you start basically implementing or adopting this new way of doing things.
Yeah, I think when we look at Web 2 in the early days and to see where we are right now on the internet with encryption and being able to enter personal information securely, it's very interesting. Take that analogy and look and see where we are crypto-wise and in terms of blockchain, and to fast forward and say what might the analog be in 5 years? I think we're definitely speeding up faster than many people can keep track. But
it's true. We are companies that basically we worry about our bottom line, and this is going to be a big unlocker of opportunities, because this is like a Kodak moment for the industry, right?
Definitely.
They're not buying films anymore. They go digital. Probably the digital experience today is a bit it's not like what we have today, but it will happen.
Definitely. Well, I want to go back to consumer protection. We're just a bit over a month-ish after the Bybit hack, and Bybit made its customers whole, but certainly with the Celsius and FTX debacles in the rearview mirror, beyond kind of looking at provenance or kind of origin of funds, counterparty, customer funds, what steps is Morabanc taking just to help customers feel at ease that their funds are safe and protected at rest, in transit, kind of at all phases of the transactional life cycle? What does that look like from a risk management perspective?
Yeah, crypto security isn't a promise, right? It's a process. We build good compliance by design. That's what we do, and basically that's what we've been doing for Morabanc is 90 years old. It's been run by the fourth generation of the same family, which has acquired an asset manager in Spain, which is adding 7 billion to our asset management. Going to be a group close to 20 billion. So this only happens, when you do things well, by the book, very conscious about risk, about processes, about your clients. And, that's basically what we bring on the table. We're going to apply the same things, the same processes, the same ideas that have worked with us for the last 90 years to this new asset class. My experience is never going to be as good as your Coinbase app or your Binance app. You're not going to have 200 different tokens to choose from. No, you're not going to have fancy colors or all that. No, your experience is going to be much more different than with these newcomer platforms. But on the other side, basically you're dealing with a company that basically has been through rough seas for many, many years. Right. And have survived, and we're here still offering services to our clients. So that's the value. That's the value that traditional sector needs to basically capitalize on, because the technology race is lost. It doesn't matter how much we invest, we cannot compete with what is already out there. But we can compete with bringing this historic trust and putting value to it and put it on the table and say, listen, here we are. We can help you build a part of your portfolio, or we can help you cross over some of your assets. And the thing is, it's basically, it's always the same problems. It's like people that started invested in 2010, 2012 in crypto, and they've made it big. Time is going by, so they are starting to get worried about like inheritance taxes. How do I spend significant amount of money that comes from crypto to buy like a big house or a yacht or something like that? So these kind of things are basically, these conversations have been had. So without having a traditional financial partner that understands you and basically helps you cross over those bridges, it's going to be very difficult. And I think it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge business.
Absolutely. I mean, trust undergirds the entire ecosystem. If you don't have that, of your clientele, but also of counterparties that you're transacting with, you really don't have anything. And I think being able to look at your customer base and say, hey, we've navigated every up and down, every bear market, we've been through it, we're here, and we're integrating the latest tech. I think that goes a long way. Can you share with us a little bit what's next on the roadmap for Morabanc as it pertains to fintech in general or digital assets and crypto offerings in particular? We talked about the stablecoin settlement solution. Is there anything else you think our listeners should know about or that you would want to flag for them?
For Morabanc, crypto is not a product, it's a strategy, right? So we're continuously looking at new ways of bringing value to our clients. So what we did, we launched 2 funds, one for Bitcoin, one for Ethereum, like physical custody funds. What I mean by that is basically we use the model of full reserve, full segregation, okay? So we wrap a wallet within a fund structure, and the clients that have the Bitcoin, or if they don't have, we buy them first, and then we put them inside the fund. There is a reason for this, basically we're transforming a digital native asset into a financial product. So in terms of basically accounting, taxes, valuation, everything else basically just works. I don't need to touch anything on my, let's say, core systems within the bank. So it's like a shortcut to basically not to create havoc on the system. So basically it just works exactly as if you had an S&P 500 fund, whatever, okay? What we have is we have the Bitcoin fund, the Ethereum fund, and now basically we are getting ready to launch the Ethereum with a staking version of the fund.
Fascinating.
Yeah, to also capitalize on this yield opportunity, this native yield opportunity. For the Bitcoin fund, basically we are trying to think about different options, but since there is not like a DeFi native market or native DeFi systems built around Bitcoin, you can lend out your Bitcoins and get yield or whatever, but we see a lot of risk on doing that yet. So we need to understand that much better before we adventure doing something like that with Bitcoin. But with Ethereum, since it is native, we can run our own nodes or whatever, add that yield to the fund, which our clients are very, very happy with that.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been an illuminating conversation. What do you think is the best method for anyone who wants to follow up with you or kind of keep track of your work? How do you recommend people do that?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post a lot, so you can just look me up on LinkedIn, and I accept everybody, so no worries about that. I also...
Don't forget your risk mitigation, though.
Exactly. Actually, someone tried to hack me the other day through LinkedIn. Basically, they sent me, it was basically a very elaborated profile that got in touch with me. It was from a provider or something like that. They were offering me like a service. And I said, I engaged into the conversation with this person. We agreed to do a call, right? And they sent me a link.
North Korean hacker?
It was the Bybit. It's very, very...
You're kidding. I was joking, but here we go.
Very similar to that. So basically what they did is they sent me a link, okay? I clicked the link, but then it just came up a message saying, oh, your camera is not working properly. You need to download these drives. I say, oh, hang on, this kind of ring the bell. So what I did, this is, it's basic awareness, but sometimes, you miss the point, right, or you are not alert enough. So what I did is I took the link and I put it on ChatGPT. I say, hey, ChatGPT, someone sent me this link. What should I do? I just posted the link, and then ChatGPT just gave me a full explanation of what was going on behind the scenes. My CISO, like real time there. Right. So ChatGPT just gave me like a full explanation.
Risk mitigation strategy, or just look at this,
exactly.
Like an anatomy of it.
Exactly. So and then basically I flagged the guy on LinkedIn, and suddenly it just disappeared. It was like showing light to a vampire that just goes into dust.
So you're not going to be custodying funds on behalf of that customer.
No.
Right.
The risk is at the core of everything.
Absolutely. That's what it looks like in the wild.
Exactly.
That's great.
Risk is at the core of everything, and we all have like personal responsibility to know about these things. And especially I'm a public person. I do what I do. It's also basically, and the way I do it is also basically to explain about my business, to obviously attract business towards my bank and all that, but that also has some risks. That basically you can become a target of unwanted attention. And this is an example. So be extra vigilant, read a lot, understand a lot, what's going on, but because, it's a dangerous world out there.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we ended the conversation with a bang. I think for our listeners, if you reach out to Carlos, don't send any sketchy links. But muchas gracias. And safe travels home. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Who knew that digital asset regulation was what put Andorra on the crypto-friendly map? Thanks for listening to this episode, and we appreciate our audience who have been tuning in to all our Live from Links episodes. Before we go, it was recently announced that one of the leading facilitators of money laundering of digital assets, We1 Guarantee, was shut down after reportedly laundering at least $4 billion in illicit funds between 2021 and 2025. On May 1st, 2025, FinCEN issued a notice of proposed rulemaking against Cambodia-based We1 Group as, quote, a primary money laundering concern. In our recent blog, we break down whether this is an actual shutdown or more of a fragmentation or rebrand of other Chinese language vendors and brokers. We also pull out the graphs to visualize the havoc these service providers have caused on the crypto ecosystem. Head down to the show notes to read a detailed analysis of We1 Guarantee, which was also featured in our most recent Crypto Crime Report.